Welcome back, TMCMS podcast interruption. We've got a good one, another surprise pick for TMCMS, a true king, 1981, Roar, R-O-A-R. Came out in 1980. It started production in 1974. It's coming from a fellow named Noel Marshall. Noel Marshall. He is a husband to TippiHedron. TippiHedron is in Alfred Hitchcock's movie The Birds. She's also the mother of actress Melanie Griffith. Melanie Griffith is super young in this movie. She is in this movie, as is her brothers, John Marshall, JerryMarshall. I just got sort of a poster graphic of this movie. I backtracked after looking through Melanie Griffith's catalog of movies in a series of the 80s, and I noted to myself I had never heard of this, never known of this. It's got a cool, simple title, a cool, simple graphic for the title, and I clicked on it. Just that easy, and I fell into this new viewing. Really interesting movie. The Movie Club Movies is always really keen on that I'm not going to repeat a Wikipedia page in its entirety. I definitely like to reference things, and I'm definitely coming from. Usually the Movie Club Movies is based around, you've probably read the Wikipedia page or the box summary on the back of the VHS or DVD, and then I'm talking to friends about, oh yeah, I just saw this. Had you heard of this movie that my friend Jon G told me about, or that I saw in my friend's video collection, or my coworker mentioned they discovered the other night? And so that brings us to a movie called Roar. After checking out what the Wikipedia had to say, checking out what maybe one reviewer on Letterboxd might have said, is it available is what I'm looking for, and is it insanity, terrify me, or sicken me? I'm not necessarily interested in that stuff. This is my journey, and TMCMS is all about exploring and finding some gems, and also exploring at your own pace. We're not about The Big Lebowski. We're not about The Room. Those are celebrated, but those are for you to watch on your own time. The Movie Club Movies is to the side of that, beyond that, underneath that. It's what we're finding. Our exploration of this movie got a resurgence, a revisit in 2015, apart because this movie has actual serious motive of protecting animals, protecting endangered animals, and specifically, I believe, in Africa, if not just in general, because it is sort of an insane project. I didn't read that there was criticism about what was going on in the motives of this movie. I think it just has this gloss of, could you have done it with better control and a better sensibility of safety for everyone involved, the animals, the actors, the kids, the family. But I want to stay in the light because this is a delight of a movie in the lens of, it's got its issues, it's odd, it's the lenses of the We Hate movie, it's the blank checks, it's how did this get made, who let this person make it, at the same time, is this really what I'm seeing on screen? Thankfully, this is one of those movies that actually clarifies what we're seeing is real. The top of the movie, the first screen you see, is beautiful backdrop of Africa, true to form. This is not a closed set. We're seeing a lot of scenery, and again, it kept me viewing after not knowing about this movie. But the first screen is from the ACCAP, the PETA, telling us all, you may think animals are being harmed in this movie, but no animal was harmed in this movie, even in the scenes where things are staged to look like animals are in harm. It's in yellow print on the screen. I think that's a part of the positive critical praise. The critical praise being, with all this insanity, what looks like out of control, actually, thankfully, animals were not hurt. Hey, everybody on Letterboxd already knows, over 70 people were hurt making this movie. Again, are you rolling with me, TMCMS? Like, that's what I'm talking about, is that this is getting interesting. The production was started in 74 with Noel Marshall and his wife, TippiHedron, producing and directing. She was in Africa filming a movie. They had seen that there was an abandoned house that was recently vacated, so it looked very much like a lived-in domesticated house, and all of a sudden there was packs of animals in there that tipped them off to create this project. I believe even being there, Miss Hedron was formulating ways to conserve animals and protect wildlife. So there's such an edge we're writing there. I also am interested in this movie because I'm trying to track down series of movies that I can watch that's going to like get me involved in a catalog of movies from a singular actor or director, producer, or writer. Like, I'd like to see other walks of life and what they've created and what maybe was pioneering for the time, or, like I've said many times, exploration, right? Melanie Griffith, to me, I think is one of those people. We talked in several episodes about Sharon Stone. Elle and I talked about that in the pilot of this. We also brought up Michelle Yeoh. There are several people that are off my map, but were just producing work throughout my lifetime. And I think we can all connect on, especially when you're like, I don't know, 10 or 12, and you can't really watch a rated R movie, and maybe not even like PG-13 movie. Maybe. I think there's a lot of missed movies, and I'm not just talking about just the Basic Instincts and stuff, but it's like, honestly, the movie club movies is definitely thriving because of this ingredient that, yeah, I wasn't seeing some of these movies until my late 20s and early 30s. And that's including because I was watching them with the movie club movies. And that includes, this is a great segue, my first viewing of this movie, the first 25 minutes, I think I was feeling the same good feeling when I had seen Street Trash for the first time, or even the second time, because that was an unclear movie. That movie is wild. That is one of the big movies that I really had to gather my friends and keep sharing these things, creating the movie club movies, movie viewing nights, and the conversations, and all of the content, graphics, the artwork I worked on, just constantly inspired by this stuff and the conversations I was having and the movies I was discovering with friends, suggesting good movies. This is a movie that brought that type of, it's beyond how did this get made and who made this. It's just the imaginative, the resourcefulness, the sideways viewing of this. It's not mainstream. These type of things are very, very interesting to me. I do think it's really good, but I also think that it's really funny for the idea of how many DVDs and VHS are out there of that movie. But those aren't necessarily the movie club movies. I'm thinking that this one is. And please, that's what the message button is for. That's what the replies and comment links are for. Hit me up with your thoughts on this pick, because I think I've got a good one. Like I said, Noel Marshall heads this one. It started in 1974. It took a while to get all the footage, and also the family was having a lot of issues shooting this movie. And I just capped off how I kind of came about discovering this and where I wanted to go with this. Podcasts like Blank Check have covered really great selections of Melanie Griffith's movie catalog, and Something Wild. Scott Aukerman is on that episode. Griffin always gives a great little history of what's going on in the context of that movie. And included in that episode, you get a bit of history on Melanie Griffith. And I just want to highlight that it is known, similar to our buddy Drew Barrymore, she had an addiction issue early on in life. And if I were to cap this movie off with an explanation to that, among so many other things that we'll never know about her private life, that's fine. That's great. I don't need to know those things. But I would add, if you shot this movie and you were whatever, I think you may leave this movie shoot with some issues, because this movie is insanity and is full of anxiety juice, but it is not particularly gory, violent, panic thrusting. I do think if you are a sensitive viewer, I think even the trailer could be jarring to most. I'm having issues with horror films and violence on movies. Having military and police presence in every single movie is wearing on me, and guns and ammunition and violence that comes from all that, and patrolling that comes from that. Hey, there is patrolling in this by real lions, all types, and they are not tamed as they are telling us in the movie, and it's also a real life family, like I'm explaining. Melanie Griffith's real life mother is also in this movie, and she's married to the director, Noel. Now, Noel has two sons named John and Jerry. When I first was trying to get some sort of sense of what was going on with this movie, JerryMarshall is all that was coming up on my Google search, and I started to weed that out by finding out who is who's the father. Oh, he's got two sons, okay, and so Jerry is one of the sons. Maybe he's, I don't know, the most, there's a lot of beards in this movie, taking a look at that, you might understand what's going on here. They're kind of switching who directed and everything like that. But I want to add that I'm applauding all of these folks, especially Melanie. I'm not really happy that the parents put this together. I do want to highlight that there is a great co-star. His assistant is Kyalo, and he is being called Mativo. I guess they're just keeping their last name. Noel playing Hank. This is not a perfect production. I couldn't always understand who this character's name was. I cannot continue without applauding this man. He was a UCLA student, and he was also studying film. He had a doctorate in, I think, journalism. I think he was fluent in the language, and I think they brought him on. But I just want to mention, this guy is also thrust into being surrounded by these wild animals, because you have to clarify that Hank, who is actually the director, this is his project. So he is the majority around all these animals, and TIPPY is his wife, and she's given the green light on this also. But like Melanie and his sons and stuff, no matter how protected they are, or maybe trained more than an actor would be, just because this is their family's project, I just don't think it's fair. And this actor is our first truly a co-star. I have to single him out and say, applaud this man, because he's dealing with a lot. He only wanted to deal with the animals while filming was happening, and I don't disagree. I would think that's the start of everybody's contract, but it isn't. Melanie Griffith dealt with a lot on this set. She was super anxious and got into heightened altercations with her father, as did it sound like the whole crew. He sort of turned on the crew at moments and had a lot of anger, and had a short fuse. He had a temper on the set, and again, this is his wife and his own project. At the end of this movie, they are divorced, which brings me to shortly that TippiHedron wrote a book after the release of this movie about the making of this movie, and I have not gotten a hold of that just yet, but I plan to, and of course that would provide probably a bit more information that I wanted to spend on my weekend Google search. And also, I didn't need to dive into a Google search. I want to bring this up. I want to hear from you guys, and at the same time, I want to work it out with what I'm seeing in the art gallery, right? I saw the movie, and now I'm going to process it myself. And along the way, if I need to do some search for a fact here or there, I'll do it. But right now, we know what we know, and it's thankfully a lot is out there. At the beginning of this movie, we see Hank, played by Noel Marshall, the director of this movie. and he looks like a grizzly man. Has anybody seen Grizzly Man? I think that this is a prequel. He's got like a chambray, a denim, Jay Leno button-up shirt, and that's sort of his uniform the majority of the movie. And what we see him doing is riding his motorcycle up to this house, and he is making his way into the house, but he's sort of walking through a front yard, which is really just, Africa. It's really just a grassy, tree-lined front yard to a house full of tigers and lions. And the lions are just rolling about, and actually everything in this yard wants to give him attention, and he's rolling about with everything. First on. So we are into anxiety juice, into the anxiety jungle, but fret not, because he's just introducing us to what's going on at this house. And like I mentioned before, I want to mention the pace, which we're getting from this scene alone. He is talking to us, but he's talking to our assistant, Mativo, about who these animals are. Everybody's got a name, and why he's with them, and why he's tumbling about. And I'm going to sound insane if I repeat everything, but I'm just going to try to repeat things in terms of how it's coming at us, because it's like, Mativo, what you need to know is that this is Donnie, the lion, and Donnie, he's just playing around. So he is getting tossed back and forth by real live animals, real lionesses, and male counterpart lions with manes and massive paws. Also, there's tigers, and there are leopards, cheetahs, and panthers. Now, those animals are not necessarily always mixed in. You can imagine the size of these beasts. So we're really just dealing at this center of this start, that there's lionesses and lions, male lions. And they are just pouncing him about, holding him and tumbling him, trying to sort of like lick his skull and kind of get his elbows and his arms. And you are just kind of seeing that they're sort of just like, I think that there's a lot of listeners out there that have pets and know that your pets will sometimes kind of like bite your knuckles and stuff, and they're not really pushing in. I don't know what you want to call that, but that's what's going on. There's also a lot of sound effect. This movie is lousy with roars, okay? Shout out to Emily on the Tammy and the T-Rex episode. We did a lot of roars. On this episode, there's a lot of roars. And even those sound effects come under scrutiny as being, at times, maybe man-made or electronical, or the combination of all three. I also want to throw in some TMCMS tidbits about Blueprint movie, or I do see, and I like it, because I like to see when it's like zombie movies are originating from this. We covered Just the Way You Are for just that point. I think that movie has a lot of origins in those crazy party guy 1990 ski movies. Check out that episode for more. In this episode, Roar, we're talking about predator versus prey. And he is just rolling about, not fearing for his life. And that's actually a little bit of a tidbit. Him versus his family, telling Melanie Griffith, manage your anxiety about these animals. Arguing with his sons about their anger issues or animosity or their vulnerability with these animals. Don't be scared. They will be scared of you and attack you. And people are having arguments about that. 70 people were attacked on this. But I'm not here to criticize him or his family. He is tumbling about, and Mativo he's not having it. Mativo is cautioned. I'm not going to go down every step of this movie, but I want to cover the beginning of this, because this is the intro to our actual narrative. There is a main lion that is, he is really explaining scientific stuff. Bad as the mic is picking him up, and the ADR, this movie is all about ADR. He is saying like, hey, just, they want to tumble with you. Just don't, be strong with them. And I have to be around these animals for my studies. And what I want to show is, I think that he's trying to show the local govern, hey, we should protect these animals even more because look, they can live with us. What you think is vicious could also be docile. How you're approaching this animal and how you're approaching life, I guess. There's so much to be said about this. So there's like a main lion named Robbie, and there's a rival named Togar. It's wild. Like there's also I think a Donnie. It's like he'll even pull him out of his pocket, and I feel like he's got names just going. There's Tony and Greg and Gary. But there is a Gary. I feel like at times he's just pulling it out. But I think in real life, I get it. As scientists, I'm not going to criticize that there's not real science that this could be based off of, but just that Togar is the rival. And you're going to hear those a lot as you watch the movie. But he's explaining to us that Togar is threatening the pride that is here at this house. So you got to just watch that. That Robbie is a good, loving main lion, but he's just got this issue that this rival keeps kind of coming up to the house. And we need to add that all of these animals, all these lions at least, are a part of Robbie's pride. This scene just goes on and on and on, and at times there's fights happening of the lions all around, and at one point there's a main fight that we focus on, and Hank runs down there and is like, he's talking to another lion. He's like, your uncles are gonna kill each other. This movie's ridiculous. He runs down, he is Grizzly Manning everybody, shouting and doing his roars himself, trying to alpha everything. It's crazy. He's like stopping those fights. He's trying to entertain the idea that at one point they'll all calm down. Just right now we came into a lot of squabbles because Mativo is just like, I'm not having this, and how can we live like this? How can we do work? How can we, they're going to kill us before we can even make our point to the governing, which is on their way. And the pace of this and the ADR is terrible because I couldn't understand who's coming in these boats, but boats roll up to this Crocodile Dundee house in Africa. Everybody's just chilling on the boat because we don't even know what's going on. The tigers are checking things out. The panthers are checking. That's all the scenes are just the animals checking things out, and it leads to the mischief and the narrative of the movie. But tigers are checking out these motorboats, and two get on and then sink the boat. And the people that were in the boat that were not really doing anything, everybody's just witnessing this, silently fearing for their lives. They are in the water. The tigers truly start attacking these folks. Again, this is my introduction, and I was like getting it, but they do get attacked, and we kind of are like showing that, hey, we got to get out of here. The two other boats leave with the injured. Mativo is like, well, that didn't help things. They had to leave, and your tigers attacked these people in the boats. Okay, so we're rolling through, and I am like, okay, so no one's going to like fear for their lives now? Mativo is like constantly got his jacket that's getting pulled away by a tiger or whatever, tiger or lioness, and he keeps saying, that's my jacket. 45 minutes into this movie, I'm like, but you never wear it. Just let them have it. But obviously it's something to get the interaction of the actor going, and also it looks to be a leather jacket. Okay. For whatever reason, Hank and Mativo keep trying to leave themselves. I think that they are trying to gather resources or go talk to people to connect his network. Again, ADR is baffling and probably worse than my podcast recording. So one boat I don't think is usable. I think it sinks for them. He gets into another big boat, and guys, the other part of this movie that is so fun is that Hank is saying dumb stuff. I think he's talking about the boat. He's like, every time I start this damn thing, my kids put their hands over their ears, and I tell them, listen to music or something. It makes no sense. Makes no sense. But we're having fun. We're in this crazy boat that tigers get into. And the tigers make the front of the boat dip into the water and sink the boat. So we get out of the water, and Hank and Mativo are still commuting to somewhere we don't know. Meanwhile, his family, including Melanie Griffith and his 2 sons and TippiHedron, have made it, to like a bus terminal, and the locals are awesome and friendly and helpful and beautiful. If this is all true, the people who work at the bus terminal, if I don't know how many are actors and how many are just personable local folks. Everybody's cool. And I find it to be really enchanting, spectacular culture that we're getting a glimpse into because of this dumb movie. If you can join in on that, allow me, because we'll continue here. That the fam is now on a bus, and they've given Melanie Griffith some dumbass line about, being keen on sexual relationships, and that her mother may have her father scared away to this part of the world because she's not putting out. And it's like, you're gonna get your little tail in some trouble, Missy. Melanie Griffith is a future star here. She's holding the frame and seems to be able to speak clearly into the microphone. And we continue on this bus trip, and we do get to sort of, seeing the house they're going to stay in its entirety. And that is a special view also, because we're seeing, it's not a windmill, it's a major, Ferris wheel size water structure that's generating energy and bringing water, or one or the other. And it's attached to the house, by like a sort of a very narrow, almost like a walkway. It looks like a large crane that's got like a water wheel. The house is several stories and looks gorgeous. However, that's really the largest view we're going to see. Everything else is the terror of being inside that house, in the rooms of that house. As we see, one of the more scary moments is happening as the family arrives and the lions and all this have left. And supposedly the lions will leave, of course, but they kind of like to follow Hank around. That I don't always believe, but we do see it enough. The house is sort of empty, and they go in and they do the dumb thing of, let's clean the house and surprise your father. It's hollow, that line, that structure, that concept, because they slightly begin to clean, and Tippy is like, hey, John, open up all the windows. Let's get all this dust going. And all the animals come in. So quickly they cannot manage anything, and it's frightening. At one point, there are these terrible edits that when they first got to the house, somebody like John is like face first onto his bed. And then all of a sudden, Melanie is hanging out on a couch after she finds bats in her room. So the edits are terrible, like, oh, we're trying to relax. It's like, no, they never relax. You just showed us like a Polaroid of relaxation, because in actuality, everybody is nonstop for the rest of this movie. If you think that there was an animal in your room, you're leaving the room, or you're trying to hide in the room. The brothers are trying to get shelter for Tippy, and Tippy's trying to find a closet. And then one brother is separated from another brother, and Tippy's like, find your brother. And then they encounter animals. The animals are stalking everybody. Everybody is trying to find a closet, and we are finding closets and ice boxes. These young folks are getting into them, including Melanie. The animals are knocking these things over. We're seeing video of what that would look like from inside the box. We're seeing snouts, and we're seeing eyes. And like I said, the animals are stalking, just wandering the premises and trying to get into these closets and stepping on these closets. The closets are falling over. And it kind of just, I don't know, they find a way to sort of wind it up and then wind it down. The animals sort of find their way, I don't know, to another room. I would say it is like a roller coaster in this way, because I am going through anxiety bats and going like bouts of anxiety through this movie, and it is kind of winding me down, and honestly, I think because I came into this going like, what else is on Melanie Griffith's, plate of movies, I am like, where's Melanie Griffith? So that's sort of my safety rope as I'm like pulling myself out of this quicksand, where it is like, okay, now we're sort of getting her out of this box, and she's saying, this is frightening, this is terrible, what the hell? And the mother is trying to wind us all down and get us all cleaned up and into a room. Let's all stay here. There actually is a line about one of the brothers saying, who puts themselves in an icebox? It's like the comedy is not saving us, but they had to write something for this to be not just a charity movie. It is out of this world. It is out of their mind to make such a thing. But why am I having so much fun watching it? Because Hank and Mativo are making their way up and down a mountain. They're sort of in like, I don't know, a quarry, a cleared out quarry. They're trying to lose tigers. Hank, I think, is trying to create a sort of micro story that there are a pair of animals that he's bonded with, but they don't really go into that any clearer. We see that they've made it to a village, and I skipped over, but there is a scene, I think when we truly first see Hank, he's helping people with a bandage, and I don't know, maybe there's some supplies exchanged, and he gets onto his motorbike and rolls out of there, hero style. And now we see him maybe with those same villagers, with those same local folks, with their beautiful outfits and I mean, just incredible lifestyle. They've got to hide sort of like an ox or cow, some livestock, and we hear screaming because the reality of it is, hey man, you're bringing in these predators, and we've protected ourselves from that very same thing. I think Hank, with all these mumbling ADRs, like, we've got to get the tigers, we got to get these bikes, and we got to. And they're borrowing, but the white man is borrowing bikes. Thanks a lot, Hank. And they get these bikes and they start rolling out. And I love this part because these bikes look so rad. And they're rolling over, rocks and terrain that looks sandy. Does anybody follow the Nambia protected wildlife cams on YouTube? I don't know if it's Nambia or Nambia. Anyway, incredible YouTube to wake up in the morning. But the same sort of terrain, it's sort of rocky, it's sort of weather worn, and the tigers are following him, and he's mumbling to us, telling us that is an issue. We gotta get these guys away from us, and everything, I think, with the speed and with the potential of these animals, everything just seems to be wrecked because they are just, with everything, with the boats, they're going and then they crash. It's because it's like they couldn't control because the animals are just taking over control. It's wild to see, no matter if they're playing it for the screen and for the camera. Part of the criticism of this is that it took so long to make this movie because this damn fool is just like, I need something for the camera, and even wild animals are not necessarily wild all the time, but that's what we're seeing is he got them to be wild and waited for them to be wild, and that's what these scenes are. They're almost like vignettes, and they crash their bikes, although kind of still usable. So let's see. I just finished watching this, and I wanted to do this as soon as possible because it is all over the place, and I wanted my narrative to actually add up as soon as possible. I didn't want to overthink it or underthink it and forget everything. So at this point, there's just these dumb things to keep these vignettes going that Mativo is like my favorite character because he's like, you're crazy. Please, I just want to be away from all these animals. And Hank is like, okay, they're going to keep following me and I've got to get out of here. I've got to go now I've got to go back. We've got to go back to the house. And I sound insane. I knew I would sound insane if I took notes on this because it is that way. And I was like, I can't believe that he just left his house to come back to his house. But if he didn't, the animals wouldn't move and we wouldn't have a movie. Later on, one of his sons has to do the same thing. But he does say, I gotta run off. Mativo, take your shirt off, go into the tree, and distract the tigers, which happens. And he runs away. Can we all just like if you're somewhere you can give some applause, can we applause Mativo because it's ridiculous. And I love him for being the incredible actor he is, and this is just ridiculous. That scene is insanity. Mativo's like, hurry back, don't be late. Hank has to go now find a car, and we see a guy in a plane, and the guy in the plane is like, I don't have a car. And we see that he's hanging out with a buddy, and these guys, I think, were at the bus terminal, and most like, this guy is like, hey, I told your family to get on a bus, because Hank's like, has anybody seen my family? And the guy's like, yeah, I told him to get on a bus at 10:30 a.m. So he's like, can I borrow your car? And he gets to borrow this dude's car. I think his name is Paul, but I could be wrong. They both drive Hank gets the car and drives back and gets Mativo. Now he's like, we've got to take these tigers back because we're so far away from sort of where I can protect them that if I leave them and just take you, Mativo, they're going to get poached. And Mativo is like, I'm not getting into this car. And we kind of like leave it at that. He's like, get into the car or I'm leaving you. And Mativo gets into the car, and another applause for him, is he gets on the back of this car. And I'm kind of like, that's what I would do too. And actually looks kind of fun. Although Hank has to drive like a wild man, and this is so ridiculous that somebody who wanted to make movies in 1974, because he's got too much money, would think of this, where he just is driving through the African terrain with two tigers that have ruined every other vehicle you've tried to drive, including 2 boats, and boats that belong to other people, and 2 people, and 70 people. He drives, and Mativo is like, slow down, you can't drive this fast. He almost slides off of a ridge. This is all scenic. We actually see incredible angles that maybe Crank got their angles from, because the cameras are in the cars. They are up against the tiger snouts and stuff. And we're seeing the dips in these hills and the sort of wreckage of this car and stuff as it drives. And here we are with a busted tire, 2 giant tigers, Mativo from UCLA, and Hank from Beverly Hills. You dipshit. And he's like, okay, well, we still gotta get back. Oh my gosh. It's a ridiculous movie. It's a ridiculous movie. Let's fast forward here, because the family has been at this house and they are trying to avoid the pride of animals. So they get out of the closets, but the animals return, and they've actually got like a zebra or something. And this is probably the goriest, most maybe disgusting moments of this movie, but it is just real life doing real life things. The family is sort of like protecting themselves, but they are just going up and down the house. Trigger warning for anxiety. But it is like a 5-story house. So the guys get up to the top. And what they've figured out is like, if you can kind of get away from everything, you get up to the top and you basically eventually jump off the house. Okay, there is a motorbike, which is Hank's, and one of the sons eventually is like, I want to use the motorbike. But everybody's like, dude, that's you getting away, and that's us still staying here. It doesn't help. But after the sort of family just kind of keeps rainbowing this house and just circling the rooms up to the top and back down and jump, one of the boys gets the motorbike and is like, I'm going to find Dad. I'm going for help. I'm going for resources. And leaves. Now he has just left only to come back. But I do want to say, he rides a motorbike in a mean way. He rides it all the way out and avoids all these tigers and lions that want to touch the tigers and run along with it, which is incredible. Incredible. And he rides it back into the house. He rides the motorcycle into the house. There's a series of ramps that lets him ride the bike all the way to the top of the house. And then eventually He's, sort of tormenting and protecting himself, and everything's getting riled up. He jumps off the house with the motorbike, which is incredible stunt and all this stuff. An incredible feat for nothing except to escape the house. The family just keeps avoiding, and there's some scary moments. If you've gotten this far in this movie, if you're going along with this movie, let me just say, if you're the faint of heart and all this stuff, I hope you haven't dove deep into this movie, but in terms of real violence, it's pretty tame, because the entire intention of this movie is not to be attacked. So you can read that. It's just that, just like Grizzly Man, his intention was not to be attacked. But this is insane. Insane. I'm going to just make a note that Melanie Griffith interacts with a lioness at one point, and it's one of the worst scenes in the entire movie. Be careful. I don't like that scene. I'm not interested in that scene, and no wonder she felt the need to use drugs in a major way, okay? It's frightening, and she was not watching this on screen. There's no green screen. She's there with a lion. Not cool. Not cool. We've seen elephants. There's a scene where an elephant... Oh my gosh, I skipped the whole part. The family tries to escape and gets into a boat themselves. Now at this point, I've said to myself, you gotta row, and you gotta focus on rowing and maintaining that boat in the center of the river. We already got tidbits about the tigers will attack you if you get into the water and swim. We've seen that the first attack was people fell out of the boat as it was drowned. Boat was sank by the tigers, and then the tigers attacked the governing people. And then when Hank and Mativo got in a couple boats, the tigers sank that boat. No one's attacking and murdering Hank, but they want to get out of the water. But the family is in a rowboat. Everybody else has been in motorboats. The family is leaving in a rowboat. I'm hoping it happens, but what they keep doing for camera purposes is maintaining themselves against the, not the beach, sort of cliffs of the river, against the river bed or whatever. Not the river bed, Justin, the sides of the river. They are meeting up with male lions that are attempting to grab the boat, and thankfully the John or Jerry get the boat back into the water instead of being maintained by the lions. That's for the camera. But we continue, and of all animals, my favorite animal is an elephant, and I know them to be peaceful. Now, I know them to also be very powerful, and like most animals, maybe every animal except for sharks, if you just leave them alone, they will leave you alone. And maybe not bees. Maybe not bumblebees. This elephant grabs the boat from the water. The family can no longer continue in the boat, and they cannot grab the boat back from the elephant. The elephant destroys this boat piece by piece. And we don't find out what happens after that. But they couldn't maintain the center of the river. We get out of that situation. Besides just wanting to leave the house, which does them no good, they at one point see that there is another house. Great, because I can barely walk another step. Ridiculous. And they even say it's safe to be in here. And they go through a fence, and should I say a chain link fence? I don't know necessarily what it is. They go inside this modest house. No doors are locked. They walk in without effort and just leave all the doors dangling. And you can kind of see that the doors have knobs that would lock, and even the chain link fence, they're going through the door of the fence, right? We've seen that. Let me just reference Jurassic World or something to that level that we're seeing now. It looks similar to that. So let me refocus that they are in this house and they feel comfortable enough to fall asleep. I want to throw back to a moment where Ms. TippiHedron is in a room sort of alone, and the cats, the big cats, she's in a room with sort of like panthers and leopards, and you can kind of see that like Hank is going to be with the big dogs, and Tippy is sort of with the non-lion based cats, because there are several makes of animals and walks of animals in this. She is avoiding them, and they have all sort of slipped on pots and pans and are stalking this one room getting onto the shelves of things, and they have rigged a shelf to have jars of things, almost like having a few jars of peanut butter in glasses, so to say. There's not really anything going on with this stuff, and it actually kind of scares the cats as they trip on them and the noises are made, and the cats sort of walk out of the room as this happens. So that's a lot of this movie also, is we kind of see some scenes start to resolve as the animals sort of just disperse, and those dispersals are relieving. Among this dispersal, a panther knocks down a bottle onto a shelf, and the shelf had already had bottles that landed on TippiHedron's head. She's knocked out. The last bottle is some sort of syrupy, sugary substance. Maybe it's melted peanut butter, or molasses, or honey, or Caro syrup. I don't give a fuck. It's disgusting. It goes on her face and head, and I think that something's going to happen. Oh my god, something's going to chomp her head off. No. She wakes up with a baby panther, just barely figuring out that it's supposed to lick this gooey substance on her sweaty beastie head. There are other panthers in this room, and Tippy gets up and heads out. That's when they've kind of followed into this house, and Tippy is like, I just need to sleep. And she falls asleep with her sweaty goose residued head. I'm not joking, this happened. But now that they've woken up, all of the lions and tigers are in this room, asleep. However, let me make some notes. It really is just a bunch of lionesses, and the way they got over there was when Tippy had this goo on her head, they didn't know how to get her out of the house. But all of the kids are at this water mechanism, and they can see her, like, I don't know, like on the 4th story of the house, which sort of, you know, can be seen, and they can see that there's like I mentioned, the narrow, almost like a narrow walkway is above this, and I'm talking 70 feet in the air, so danger. But they say, get on to the top of the house. Danger. And then go to, I think they say track. Go to the track. You can kind of hear them saying that. And she does, and then we see her kind of hand and knee sort her way across this track. And we don't even make that a scene. She just gets across it. But I will mention something like Transformers Age of Extinction, or even Bruce Willis in Die Hard inside the vents. She's sort of scooting her way, and we make no tension of it necessarily. She's over it, and then they get to the house and they go to sleep. But at the same time, I kind of was excited to watch her do that because I wanted to see more of this water mechanism, and we don't really get a lot more. But you do kind of see this thing. Anyway, I will also make a note. I think it's that time of the year where people are making their plans to go on vacations to amusement parks. I kind of got that feeling from just the way this small segment is sort of set up. It's like, look at this incredible wooden house from the 1960s and 70s. And look at this water mechanism that almost doesn't do anything except for excite us in our imagination. And it's the 80s, you know, and it's just kind of like, it reminds me of an 80s amusement park attraction of some way. Shout out to the Action Boys for bringing up SeaWorld's Waterworld stunt. It's been on my mind because they kind of have brought it up on some earlier episodes, and I think it still peppers into their conversations when they talk about stunts, water-based movies, because I'll listen to any part of the catalog, brings up even something from 2019. I'm thinking of it today because it's like, yeah, the Waterworld stunt attraction, you know, and those costumes. It's like interesting. So maybe you catch the bug from watching this movie also. So now everybody feels safe, and they mention if they wanted to kill us, they would have done it in our sleep. Thank you, TippiHedron, because they slept with all these animals, and there's seems to be some sort of bond. And even the way I pulled the scene was, maybe even the lionesses are like, that other house is crazy. There's too much masculinity going on. There's too much toxic masculinity going on. We wanted to be in this quieter, more Airbnb style house. I don't know. But they all walk out together, and we're still wondering, where's Dad? Where's Mativo? And meanwhile, do you guys want to hear a dark side of this movie? The folks that were attacked in the boat at the beginning of the movie, that I was kind of calling like the governing, anyway, I don't need to explain it, but they are sort of like supervisor types, and we don't even get to meet them, but they've made it back to sort of their encampment, and they've kind of been talking like, look, he's protecting those animals at that house. We just need to leave him alone. And one guy's like, did you see those animals attack us? They almost ripped my head off. And this guy's got increasingly amounts of bandages on his head. And I want to give a shout out to who he might be here in a moment. There is one individual that's like, I want to go back to that house and I want to shoot those animals in their freaking heads because they attacked me and I could get a lot of money for their hides, this and that. I'm a villain. But he's amongst people that actually were there to maybe have an actual meeting of importance and are sort of like just trying to pause on that. And if you watch this movie and hear the ADR clearly to understand the more storyline that I'm giving you, more to you. That's what the movie club movies showings is all about. If I was gathered with more people, I would have been able to put more of a picture together. But just the way you are, I kind of liked the short and sweet discovery of this movie, and I just want to share it as clear as possible. And like our other movies we're going to cover with more tedious detail, this one, I'd like you to have your own moment to explore and discover on your own. So we have a villain or two that supposedly is coming back to this house. So no matter if you leave this house, you constantly come back. And that's what we see happening. We never figure out about the village or anything, about the car or the bikes. No one wants those back. We just ruined all that for whoever owned those things. Hank has met with his fam, but I think I might have skipped over, forgive me if I'm tripping on this narrative timeline, but at one point they are seeing that I think that the poachers are on their way, that maybe a poacher has killed one animal. I think that we've seen TOGAR return. Now, TOGAR is the rival lion that keeps causing havoc when he returns. But I think at the same time, the poachers are on horseback. Everybody's kind of converging. And I think that the poachers want to attack some lions, but the lions actually attack the poachers, destroy them, and not necessarily eat them, but destroy them. And that's might be gory, but you'd be surprised that this camera doesn't really show you what's going on. It just shows you that the actor has like a bloody shoulder, and then we just see that the actor is just clothing and a lion is going through this clothing. TOGAR, I didn't even explain. TOGAR is credited as an actor, but TOGAR has a bloody mane the entirety of the movie, which is interesting. I found it to be disgusting, and sometimes spelling it out makes you and I the ignorant folks, but I'm not a jackass. I'm just watching this movie, and I see a jackass on the screen, and that's not TOGAR. So I think that one of the poachers is an actor that may not be credited in this movie. I think that the actor playing one of them is Miguel Sandoval, and I might not be accurate on that, but Miguel Sandoval plays Mr. Escobar in 1995, Get Shorty. That is Yayo's like uncle through marriage, or Yahoo. Anyway, if you've seen Get Shorty, I love Get Shorty. He's in that. He's also in Seinfeld as a bodega owner who won't take Seinfeld's bounce check down from the window and works with Kramer in a chicken fighting event. Anyway, look him up. With the poachers killed, Hank is upset. Now, Hank has been upset when he's being attacked by the animals. Hank has been upset when he's seen a lion killed on the side of the road, and that's led to, I think, tracking down the poachers. He's also very upset that the poachers have died, the animals killed him, because I don't think he wants anybody dead from these animals. Of course, he's not happy about poaching. trigger warning for anxiety. When Hank is introducing us to all the tigers and lions, it's really a wild scene when he gets inside the house, because we've seen all these tigers and lions, and that is a lot to see. Then we get inside of his house, and all of these lionesses get up and meet him at the door and are taller than him as they get on their hind legs. And like I mentioned, tumbling and rolling. They also are like sort of hugging, and their paws can grip his arms and also grip his abdomen. So a lot of that is happening. And this is sort of a trigger warning, because for me to see a mass of bodies, for me to see a mass of animals, like a lot of animals all at once. I don't like to see a lot of fish all at once. I don't like to see a lot of vermin all at once. I don't like to see a lot of puppies all at once. I don't like to see a lot of dolphins all at once. I don't like to see a lot of lions all at once. I don't want to see a bunch of dogs all at once. I don't like seeing that. And this was a shocking, sensational moment in this movie, to see him walk through the door and a room filled of wild cats approach him. It's happening on screen. That's a big moment of this entire, famous for this scene, is a possibility. He, at one point with those lions and all of this, has hurt his hand. The man, Noel Marshall, playing Hank. And he goes into another room to get first aid. We don't follow him, but it's amazing that this jackass treats these sets like a real set and not like a danger zone. But that's the key to comedy, is realism and treating things as real, as really happening, and also in movie making, reality and acting. Of course, Justin. This fool goes into another room and comes out with bandages as he wraps it up. I think he even spoke to Gary at one moment. The impact of this scene is that as he's calmly walking out the door, like Bob Saget from the best Full House episodes, he's wrapping his hand up, and the length of the excess bandage is being toyed with, held by another lion. And of course, lions are bigger and stronger than Shaquille O'Neal. It's true. And he's actually trying to pull it back. Ridiculous. I play it as, I think that's real blood. I think he's really injured, because I think that's the type of movie he was going for. And at the same time, even if it's play blood, this is ridiculous. And something's got his bandage. And my mind is like, okay, so how do you get out of that? You don't have scissors. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculously enjoyable and fun. I don't know what's going on. It's a riot. A roaring riot. Hank can get very upset and will kind of squeal when he sees something upsetting. I also want to mention, and I'm not trying to make fun of Hank or Noel as a person in these moments, but he's just something to be seen on screen also. He is as big as like a Nick Nolte or even a Gary Busey, and I know that's comical to get those guys mixed up, but you can type of man, barrel-chested, or even at this moment, I'm even feeling like he's got barrel shoulders. I think it's from rolling around, truly fearing for his life silently, because I gotta tell you, dude, you don't just do that and go, if I don't control myself, I'm going to get my head ripped off. So I'm sure his muscles are super tense as he rolls around day in and day out from 1974 to 1980. For 6 years, he was producing this movie. So he is a burly man, a man that would trigger your attention, because it's kind of hard to look away from him. Maybe because he's the alpha of all these jackass lions, but he is the alpha jackass nonetheless. And it is wild to see him wrestle around, and then in the moments of being upset about things, it's wild to hear him exude something that may be genuine grief. Ultimately, the family is reunited, and he goes on to just be like, I love you guys, there's nothing to be afraid of. And the fam had left the house saying, if they wanted to kill us, they would have done it during the night when we were sleeping. And a new lens has been placed over this camera, where now we're supposed to feel relief and feel at peace with these animals that we can live with and live against. And so to say that he's trying to protect species that they are out there in the wild and it's possible to live with. A foolish notion to produce such a movie because it doesn't really hold up over time, although it does seem celebratory towards wildlife. In these moments, I just was like, this is crazy. Peaceful music is being played eventually, and I'm going to wrap up this sort of montage of the fam by saying that the fam is sort of together and they seem to be petting the animals with much more joy and peacefulness. Now we may be with more of the tame side of these animals. I also think I've made it my effort to say that these are lionesses versus these predatory male maned lions, and I'm catching myself now knowing that the lionesses are actually the ones going out and fending for food, but I'm not here to go through the exact science. I guess it's true to say that, well, that doesn't mean that they're going to be violent. They just will be violent to get their food. Male counterparts are having to maintain the territory and the American male boasting of your chest, making yourself seem big when really you're just as sensitive as the rest of us. This sort of the American masculinity veil that we all sort of wear when you're really feeling upset about things, but you have to be tough. So maybe that they become more violent in that anything that crosses their paths, like one of the Marshall brothers, it wants to attack and bite their leg, whereas the lionesses are like, look, the food is here. We just need to rest. And these folks are resting, so we're going to rest with them in the house. But they've all left the house and they're being petted nonetheless. There's panthers and all of this. But there are also baby animals in this moment. Now we saw a baby panther lick TippiHedron's Caro syruped head. But now we're seeing panthers and leopards and all of this in very, very baby forms. And trigger alert again. That's great. But you're also going to see very young, I'm going to use the word puppies, very young puppies, like puppies so young, I don't think that they should be separated from their fam, but they are also in this scene, so that's the gathering of our stars. And I want to add that you're like, Justin, you're crazy, I'm criticizing you, you're insensitive to animals as actors, you don't know what's going on in this movie, Justin, you got it all wrong, because animals are good, and you're crazy, Justin, you've been shitting on these animals since the episode started. I criticize you, Justin, do you even take showers? Okay, I do take showers, but whoever's criticizing me, I'm speaking to you right now, that this moment of the movie is sort of what I'm talking about. You can get your introduction, get your impressions, which is what this person's criticizing. Yeah, your impressions of animals. You got the wrong impression of animals, Justin, I'm coming at you in the comments. Okay, but ultimately, my impression of this movie is really what I'm talking about. And if you can kind of turn some pages that we've gone through here now, we're at this moment. We've got Melanie Griffith in the scene. We've got TippiHedron in the scene. We got JerryMarshall, John Marshall. And we're in a patio, sitting at a wooden table, drinking what I could only call a latte. And there's always wildlife in this movie, and there's usually a cat someplace in the scene. If you think that it's just Mativo and Hank talking, there's usually a cat lounging in a tree, something like that. And we're seeing that as the family lounges in patio furniture in Africa. But it's happening. I'm not making this up. So put your criticisms down of my impression of the movie. We're having fun. This scene just makes me laugh and makes it seem very foolish. I think that Noel Marshall is singing about coming to Eden. The soundtrack, thankfully, is not disruptive along the way of this movie, kind of after a scene or even when he's sort of tumbling. He tumbles with these animals several times, But there are moments where he's just like, things are okay and things are gonna get better out here in the woods. And Tiger has like a paw on his head. I'm not joking. So at this point, it's like, come with us to Eden. Our peaceful family will be there grilling sausages and eating ranch dressing. I don't know, but he's singing. We're having a peaceful time. He's already said, like, come here, you guys, I love ya. And people are oddly falling off of trees and stuff. And we're sort of ending our escapades here and our family adventure at one point back inside this house. And I think they're trying to exude, and I think the music is actually saying it too. Look, the tough times are over. Wouldn't you like to return again? Hank is like, what do you think, John? Jerry, what do you think? And somebody's ADRing, I don't have to be back to Chicago for a week. It's like, what was up with boomers and going to Chicago? I don't know, but we're wrapping this movie up that way. I would say Noel was smart to kind of give it back to the animals. We've seen giraffes, we've seen flamingos, and we also saw elephants and other wildlife throughout this movie. So at the end of the movie, the credits and sort of our last pans of the scenery is the scenic terrain of Africa and its land and animals. And I find that to be respectful and awesome. And again, these movies shot on film, these movies shot on location are all we got as we move further and further away from that. I always want to note my favorite podcast, Action Boys, We Hate Movies, How Did This Get Made, Blank Check, Where I Want to Spend My Starbucks. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. A little bit of a shorty on a TMCMS podcast. Hashtag TMCMS on social media. We're on Letterboxd, YouTube, and Instagram, as well as Threads. The Movie Club Movies.
Please be kind. Please rewind.
You can find us anywhere you catch pod, as well as Letterboxd at hashtag TMCMS, the Movie Club Movies Podcast. Be sure to smash that message button. Roar!